Chris Paul deserves the MVP.
Wowee.
Yeah? Well, okay, so I think he deserves to be in the conversation, but what are we doing here? If he deserves to be in the conversation, you put his name in there by saying, I think he should be the MVP. And look at the stats, you read them, and then you look at me and you think you're an idiot because they're not good enough for an MVP. And you might be onto something, 16 points, almost 5 rebounds, almost 9 assists. It doesn't jump off the page, but you need to consider what he's doing at Phoenix. How much does he have to improve a team before it's like, okay, this is the importance of a pure point guard. I know you don't need them in a team anymore. You can have Steph Curry, you can have Dame Lillard, but if you do have someone that plays the point guard in the traditional role, like the last person to win an MVP with 20 points or less was Steve Nash at Phoenix, right? Steering a team around to the number 1 spot in the West. I think if Chris Paul does that, if he gets them to the number 1 spot in the West, it's worth saying his name when you start talking about the MVP for this season.
I think there's a couple things for me when I hear you say like the only reason Phoenix are where they are now is because of Chris Paul. And the two things that stand out are, for one, for the last however many seasons, the biggest thing that Phoenix and Devin Booker have missed is a point guard, a good point guard. They've had terrible point guards playing next to Devin Booker, and that was, for me, part of the reason why they weren't able to win consistently. The second thing is, last year, before Chris Paul arrived, they obviously found some sort of winning mentality. They got into the play-in tournament. They went 8-0 in the Orlando bubble. They clearly found something with Monty Williams where it was like, we're figuring something out here. We've got a way of playing. We've got the idea that we can now compete with the best there is in the NBA. I don't deny for a second that Chris Paul has taken them to the next level. However, it is one of those ones where sometimes in the NBA, things become a little too black and white, a little too simplistic with narratives, and now all of the credit is going to Chris Paul. But I don't know if all of it is all from Chris Paul.
Well, okay. The reason why I put this forward is because there's a chance the Suns are going to come first in the West, which means a player from that team should be in the chat for MVP. And I don't think it should be Devin Booker because he's had his chance to lead this team to the playoffs heaps. Yeah, he can score 70 points against Boston in Boston. Never played a playoff game. That's all Chris Paul's done for the last, 9-10 years of his career. Even when he goes to an OKC team that the bookies had as the second favourite to come last in the West last year, he took him to the 8th spot. Wherever he is, he's guaranteed to improve your team. Definitely going to make your team better. He's got a better win share than Devin Booker this year. Like he's the gun on that team. As good as Devin Booker is, the reason why they're mixing it with the top is because of their point guard.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I said that my top 3 for MVP, and I understand that this is not how the voting works. This is not who the award goes to, but it was Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Chris Paul. And it was because of the value they offer on the court is so much more than just being the best player on a good team. Chris Paul is doing both right now. He's adding incredible value and being the best player. And I've just got the winning percentages here before and after CP. Before CP was drafted with the Hornets, they won 22% of the game. With CP, 46%. The Clippers, 39% before him, 61% with him. The Rockets, 67% before him. With him, 79%. The Thunder jumped 60% to 61%, but that was in the wake of Westbrook. The Suns, 47% before Chris Paul, 72% with him. That's incredible. And he's always been this guy. So let me ask you guys, does this season, with what he's done with the Suns, something that we've seen him do everywhere, does this change your opinion of Chris Paul to the point where, to me, there's 4 point guards that stand above everyone else, and that's Magic, Steph Curry, John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas. Is Chris Paul in that?
He is. That's the chat, right? He's knocking on the door of those guys. And you read out that list of the teams and how much they've improved once Chris Paul's been added to the roster. It's almost like you want to give you an MVP for just
your career?
The career, right? Like how often he's improved the team. It's like none of those years he's popped off the page and been, it has to be me. But you have a look at the 10 years and it's like, well, he has to have one, right? He's clearly the most valuable player everywhere he goes. even with guns. Blake Griffin, James Harden, young SGA, and now Booker. It's like before he goes and plays next to these players, it's like, is Chris Paul going to be the better player? And after half a season, it's like, he is. He's the best player on that team. Or the most important, James Harden is going to smash Chris Paul one-on-one at basketball, right? But in team basketball, give me Chris Paul over James Harden in a playoff series for sure.
The Suns finishing in the number 1 seed would make it an interesting chat because
It's a game and a half.
yeah, and like, you know, it's hard to see anyone from Utah, even if they finish in the number 1 seed, winning the MVP. You've got LeBron and AD who are out and almost out of contention because of the time they've missed, potentially. If the Nets don't finish in the number 1 seed, it's hard to say, hey, you, James Harden, even though he probably deserves it currently, it's hard to be like, you, the guy with 2 All-Stars on your team, you didn't finish in the number 1 seed, but here's the MVP award.
Yeah, and also you dropped a nuclear bomb in Houston, so...
Right. Nikola Jokic, you know, facing an uphill battle now without Jamal Murray. So, like, the race for the MVP award is wide open, maybe more so than it's ever been. There's a bunch of guys who have a realistic shot at it. So, I mean, look, I struggle to you know, be on the exact same page with you right now. It's not to say that he might not, you know, swindle a few votes come end of season.
It's tough to win the MVP award with
numbers.
with 16 points
Yeah.
averaging, but you know it's not completely impossible. And again, he's just changed. We're watching him completely change an NBA franchise in real time. So it's kind of cool.